The Grand Chamber of the United Galactic Council was a marvel of ancient engineering. Suspended in the heart of a Dyson sphere, it was a place where the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy gathered. The air shimmered with holographic displays, broadcasting the session across the stars. Hundreds of alien representatives, from towering insectoid warlords to ethereal beings of living plasma, watched in silent amusement as the final speaker took the floor. Earth's representative stood alone on the central platform. Compared to the others, he seemed unremarkable, just another primitive from a world barely past its infancy in space. His name was Ambassador Elias Carter, and he wore no armor, no extravagant robes, just a simple EarthGov uniform. Yet his presence carried the weight of billions. High Chancellor Olithka, a towering cephalopod-like being, regarded Carter with condescension. "Humanity," he began, his deep voice echoing, "you stand before this council as an anomaly, a species that has expanded too quickly, disrupted the balance of the stars, and refused to submit to the order that has guided civilizations for millennia." His many eyes narrowed. "You are reckless, dangerous, and so the Council has decreed that Earth must be placed under galactic supervision. Your governments will surrender authority to us. Your fleets will disarm. Your worlds will be occupied, peacefully, if you comply." Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber. The larger empires had crushed dozens of rebellious species before. Humanity would be no different. Carter slowly exhaled, his gaze sweeping the room. "You misunderstand us," he said, his voice calm but unwavering. "We do not seek war. We did not come here to challenge you. We came in good faith, to stand as equals." He took a step forward. "But if you think we will bow, you are mistaken." Laughter broke out among the delegates. Some pounded their seats in amusement. Even Olithka chuckled, a deep rumble. "You will bow, Ambassador Carter. You do not have a choice." Carter tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Then he raised his hand. A simple gesture. But in that moment, everything changed. A council-wide broadcast crackled to life. Footage played. The Sol system, Earth's fleets, Mars' orbital defenses, Luna's hidden war stations. But it was what followed that silenced the chamber. A council dreadnought, one of their own, exploding into a fireball. Another crippled, its engines dead. It was not an attack, but a warning. A message. Carter let the silence drag before speaking. "That was your scouting fleet, the one you sent ahead to prepare for occupation. As of 5 minutes ago, they no longer exist." A cold, sharp pause filled the air. The laughter was gone. "You claim we are reckless, that we are dangerous," Carter continued. "Perhaps we are. But we are also something else. We are human, and we do not kneel." The final words he spoke would be remembered for centuries. Then come and try. The United Galactic Council had faced countless rebellions over the centuries. Primitive species that mistook passion for power, insurgents who believed courage could outweigh superior technology. None had ever won. So when the Grand Armada entered the Sol system, the fleet's commanders saw their mission as a formality rather than a battle. They would crush Earth's defenses, land occupation forces, and within days, humanity would become just another footnote in the Council's long history of conquest. Admiral Xylan Kor, a veteran of dozens of planetary subjugations, watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Vindicator of Order. The fleet consisted of 1,000 warships, ranging from agile interceptors to planetary siege cruisers. Against them, the humans had nothing comparable. At least, that's what the Council's intelligence had reported. But something was wrong. As the fleet pushed deeper into Sol, Xylan Kor felt an unfamiliar sensation crawl through his spine. There was no resistance. No human fleet had come to meet them. No distress signals, no last stand transmissions. Nothing. It was too easy. "Deploy planetary scanning arrays," the Admiral ordered. "Find their defenses." His command staff moved quickly, launching waves of probes toward Earth, Mars, Luna, and the asteroid belt. The data returned in seconds, and what they saw only deepened the confusion. There was no fleet, no orbital defense lines, no battle stations. The few human ships in the system were civilian freighters or outdated patrol craft, scattered and powerless. Phylancor smirked. "Pathetic," he muttered. "Prepare the ground invasion." But then, everything went dark. The Vindicator's lights flickered. Emergency klaxons blared. Fleet-wide comms turned into static as power drained from every Council warship. Phylancor lurched forward. "What is happening?" "Report." A trembling officer checked the diagnostics. His voice cracked. "Yes, sir. Our ships have been compromised. We're locked out of our own systems." A new voice crackled over their communication channel. A human voice. "Welcome to Sol," it said. "We've been expecting you. The trap is sprung." Hidden within the asteroid belt, Luna's dark side, and Mars' underbelly, thousands of human railvan batteries, stealth drones, and missile silos activated in perfect synchronization. Sol had never been undefended. The humans had simply hidden their weapons where no one had thought to look. Now, with the Council fleet paralyzed, the real battle began. Railguns, the backbone of Earth's space arsenal, fired from the asteroid belt with pinpoint precision. Unlike energy-based weapons, which shields could absorb, these slugs were pure kinetic force. Traveling at relativistic speeds, they punched through Council warships like they were made of paper. The Vindicator of Order shuddered as a slug the size of a truck tore through its engines. Fires erupted across its decks. Around it, Council warships exploded one after another, helpless as Earth's forces picked them apart. The few ships that weren't immediately destroyed tried to retreat, only to find their jump drives disabled by human cyber warfare. Admiral Phylancor's heart pounded. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter, a message to the galaxy. An hour later, the once mighty Grand Armada was reduced to wreckage. Less than 100 ships managed to escape, broadcasting distress signals as they fled back to Council space. From the ruins of the battlefield, a final transmission was sent to every major power in the galaxy. A video showing the destruction of the fleet, the wreckage drifting lifelessly above Earth. And at the end of it, a single message. "We did not attack you first, but we will finish what you started." The defeat at Sol sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Never before had the United Galactic Council suffered such a catastrophic loss. Never had an enemy turned their superior fleets into burning wreckage so easily. Panic spread among the Council's ruling species. For centuries, they had believed humanity to be nothing more than an upstart species, bold but fragile. Now they were forced to confront an unthinkable truth. Humanity was not just surviving. They were winning. A desperate response. In the Council's war chambers, the surviving admirals and strategists gathered. Maps and star charts flickered in holographic displays. Every battle they had ever fought followed the same pattern. Overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower, force their surrender, and integrate them into the Council's dominion. But humans did not fight like any other species. They defy all conventional logic. Admiral Vor hissed, his scaled fingers digging into the metal table. They do not stand and fight. They do not engage in honorable battle. They use deception. Another general spat. Cowards. High Chancellor Olithka remained silent, watching the footage from the ambush at Sol on repeat. He analyzed every second, searching for an answer to a single question. How? How had humanity disabled their fleet so easily? How had they predicted the Council's attack before it even began? A flicker of movement on the screen caught his attention. Civilian ships, the same ones their scouting reports had dismissed. His many eyes widened. "They're freighters," he muttered. They weren't harmless. The room fell silent. Olithko expanded the footage, enhancing the details. The freighters hadn't fled during the battle. They had been listening, scanning, analyzing. Before the battle had even begun, Humanity had placed thousands of disguised intelligence ships throughout Sol space, intercepting enemy transmissions, decoding fleet movements, and most devastatingly, hacking directly into Council command networks. The humans had hijacked their ships mid-battle. It was not strength that had won them the ambush. It was strategy. The Battle of Drasvin IV. Determined to strike back, the Council launched an invasion of Drasvin IV, a newly colonized human world on the fringes of known space. The plan was simple: overwhelm the colony before humanity could react. An expeditionary force of 300,000 troops landed on the surface, expecting little resistance. They were wrong. The moment the Council forces stepped onto Drasvin IV, their vehicles shut down. Their weapons refused to fire. Their communication signals scrambled into nonsense. And then the humans attacked. Not with advanced war machines or massive armies, but with hit-and-run ambushes, disguised traps, and a level of guerrilla warfare no Council force had ever encountered. A single human platoon could strike and disappear within minutes, using the dense jungle and urban ruins to their advantage. Snipers eliminated commanders. Engineers hacked into supply lines, rerouting Council reinforcements into enemy fire zones. The Council soldiers had been trained for open combat, not this. They never saw their enemy, never knew when the next strike would come. Within 2 weeks, the once mighty invasion force collapsed. The surviving officers, broken and terrified, transmitted a single message back to the Council: "We cannot win. The galaxy begins to fear." The Council had never lost a planetary invasion before. Now they had lost 2 battles in a row, to an enemy that refused to fight the way they expected. The message was clear. Humanity did not play by the galaxy's rules, and that made them the most dangerous enemy the Council had ever faced. The fall of Drasvin IV sent shockwaves through the United Galactic Council. Humanity had done more than just repel an invasion. They had humiliated one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. For the first time in history, the Council was on the defensive, a desperate counterattack. Determined to reclaim their lost authority, the Council launched a galactic-wide campaign to crush humanity before they could grow stronger. Fleets that had once patrolled the borders of empires were now redirected toward human-controlled space. Every available warship, every trained soldier, every strategic asset was mobilized. The plan was simple: overwhelm humanity before they could adapt again. Within weeks, 10 separate invasions were launched across human-controlled space. Planets were bombarded, colonies cut off, and fleet engagements escalated to a scale never before seen. But what the Council failed to realize was that every battle was making humanity stronger. The evolution of war. At the start of the war, humanity had been technologically inferior. Council warships were larger, faster, and more heavily armed. Their soldiers had centuries of experience in planetary invasions. Their strategies had been perfected over generations of conquest. But humans had something the Council did not. They adapted. Captured enemy ships were reverse-engineered within weeks, their technology integrated into human fleets. Council armor was studied and improved upon. Human scientists developed energy shielding, railguns, and advanced electronic warfare systems at an impossible pace. By the time the Council engaged in its second wave of attacks, human ships were no longer outdated. They were superior. A single Terran battleship, once considered a joke, could now go toe-to-toe with a Council dreadnought. And win. The Battle of Onithra Prime. One of the largest clashes of the war took place over Onithra Prime, a former human colony that had been occupied by the Council during their initial counterattack. A massive armada of 300 Council warships was stationed above the planet, fully expecting a human fleet to arrive. They did, but not in the way the Council expected. Instead of charging into battle, the human fleet arrived in small, scattered formations, striking at weak points in the enemy's defensive lines. Every engagement was coordinated, every strike precise. Enemy reinforcements were cut off before they could even react. Then, humanity's newest warships entered the battlefield. For the first time, Council admirals saw human-made dreadnoughts, their hulls reinforced with hybrid shielding, their weapons modified to counter Council defenses. A battle that should have been a Council victory turned into a one-sided slaughter. The Council lost Onithra Prime in a single day. The retreat begins. Across the galaxy, the Council found itself losing ground. What had once been a campaign of domination had become a desperate struggle for survival. For every planet they invaded, humans retook 2. For every ship they destroyed, humans built 5 more. And the worst part, humanity was just getting started. The war had dragged on longer than the United Galactic Council had ever anticipated. What should have been a swift campaign of domination had turned into a nightmare. Every species that had once mocked humanity now feared them. Every fleet sent to subjugate them had failed. And now, the unthinkable was about to happen. The fall of a core world. The siege of Vorjakar. Vorjakar was a fortress world, the pride of the Council's military. Its defenses were impenetrable, or so they believed. It was surrounded by planetary shields strong enough to withstand prolonged bombardment. Its orbital stations were armed with the most advanced weaponry in the known galaxy. Its surface was home to billions of Council soldiers, veterans of countless campaigns. For centuries, it had stood as an untouchable symbol of Council supremacy. Then humanity came. The first strike. Instead of launching a full-scale invasion, the humans began with surgical precision strikes. Their warships, smaller and faster than the Council's, moved in coordinated waves. Hit-and-run attacks crippled orbital defenses, targeting power stations, communication relays, and fleet command centers. By the time the Council forces understood what was happening, they were already cut off. Then the real assault began. The storm breaks. Humanity's fleet arrived in force, led by the Sovereign, a dreadnought unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Armed with planet-cracking railguns, enhanced by stolen and improved Council technology, it tore through enemy defenses like paper. Orbital stations exploded, warships shattered under relentless bombardment. The skies of Vorjakar burned. And then, humanity deployed their ground forces. But they didn't land conventionally. Instead, they dropped from orbit in specialized drop pods, bypassing planetary defenses entirely. Council soldiers had fought many enemies before. They had faced disciplined armies, mindless hordes, and towering war machines, but they had never fought humans. They weren't just soldiers. They were hunters. The fall of Vorjakar. Human strike teams operated in complete silence, moving through the city ruins with terrifying efficiency. Council defenses collapsed from within. Supply lines were severed, command centers overrun, and high-ranking officers assassinated before they could issue orders. Within 4 days, the once mighty fortress world had fallen. The last transmission from Vorjakar sent a single, chilling message across the galaxy. They are not an empire. They are not conquerors. They are something worse. They are predators. And for the first time in history, the Council was afraid. With the fall of Vorjakar, the United Galactic Council faced a grim reality. They were losing. Humanity had shattered the illusion of Council supremacy, proving that their centuries of dominance had been nothing more than a carefully maintained facade. The other species of the galaxy, once terrified of defying the Council, now saw the truth. The Council could be beaten, and humanity was doing exactly that. The revolt begins. News of Vorjakar's fall spread faster than light. Across the Council's dominion, whispers of rebellion turned into roars of defiance. Species that had once submitted without question now saw an opportunity. The mighty Council, once thought invincible, had been brought to its knees by a species that had only just arrived on the galactic stage. On the industrial world of Kelveris, slaves who had toiled for generations overthrew their overlords, seizing control of shipyards and weapons factories. Within days, they declared allegiance to the Terran Federation. On the war-torn colony of Seri 5, a resistance movement, long hunted and crushed by the Council, rose again, this time armed with human-supplied weaponry. One by one, the chains of oppression began to break. The Council's last stand. The ruling species of the Council were in chaos. For the first time in history, their fleets were not invading. They were retreating. Entire sectors were abandoned as humanity and its new allies pressed forward. Desperation forced the Council's leaders into a final reckless decision. They gathered what remained of their once mighty fleets and fortified Zurich Prime, the heart of their empire. If humanity wanted to end the war, they would have to fight for it. The final offensive. Humanity did not hesitate. With the largest fleet they had ever assembled, the Terran Federation descended upon Zurich Prime. Council admirals, once arrogant and dismissive of humanity, now trembled as they watched the Terran fleet approach. This was not the same force that had fought at Sol. This was an unstoppable war machine. Ships that had once been inferior were now the deadliest in the galaxy. Weapons that had once been primitive now ripped through Council defenses with ease. Humanity had not just adapted to war. They had perfected it. As the battle raged, the Council's forces, outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outclassed, crumbled. The fall of an empire. By the end of the battle, Zurich Prime burned. The last Council warships flood into the void, their leaders abandoning their empire in disgrace. Humanity had done the impossible. The war was over, and in its place, a new era had begun, one where humanity stood at the top. The war had ended. Humanity had won. Across the ruins of the once mighty United Galactic Council, the last remnants of the old regime crumbled into obscurity. Former Council-controlled worlds, left leaderless and exposed, found themselves at a crossroads. Would they attempt to rebuild their lost empire? Or would they adapt, just as humanity had? The answer came swiftly. Humanity did not just conquer. They did not just destroy. They reshaped the galaxy itself. A broken galaxy. In the wake of the war, billions of beings across the galaxy found themselves free for the first time in centuries. The Council's empire had been built on the backs of subjugated species, their entire civilizations reduced to mere tools for their overlords. Now, those species looked to humanity. They had expected new rulers. They were wrong. Instead of an iron-fisted regime, humanity introduced something the galaxy had never seen before: choice. No forced servitude. No demands for tribute. No proclamations of absolute dominion. Humanity offered the liberated species a place among them, not as subjects, but as equals. The galaxy had never known such a thing. The fate of the Council's leaders. But there were still those who had resisted. Not every member of the Council had surrendered. Many of its former rulers had fled to the farthest corners of the galaxy, hoping to rebuild in secret. In hidden stations and lawless systems, they gathered remnants of their fleets, clinging to the delusion that they could reclaim what was lost. They were hunted down. Humanity did not seek vengeance, nor did they demand bloodshed. Instead, the former rulers were brought before the very species they had oppressed. Trials were held, broadcast across every known world. The evidence of centuries of enslavement, war crimes, and mass executions was laid bare. The galaxy judged its former masters. Some were imprisoned, forced to answer for their actions. Others faced exile, sent to live among the very people they had once ruled. A fate far crueler than execution, to live powerless in a galaxy that no longer feared them. The Council was no more. The birth of the Terran Accord. With the war over, the question remained: what came next? Humanity had no interest in ruling the galaxy alone. Instead, they proposed something radical. A new alliance, not an empire, not a council of tyrants, but a coalition of equals. They called it the Terran Accord, a new order built not on fear, but on strength, unity, and shared prosperity. Any species willing to stand as equals could join. Many did. For the first time in history, the galaxy was not ruled by an ancient empire, but by an alliance of species bound by a common goal. Never again would tyranny rule the stars, And at the center of it all stood humanity, not as conquerors, but as leaders of a new era. The war had ended. The Council had fallen. The galaxy had changed forever. But for humanity, victory was only the beginning. As the newly formed Terran Accord spread across the stars, humanity found itself in an unfamiliar position, not as rebels, not as survivors, but as the architects of a new galactic order. For the first time in history, the galaxy did not fear the rise of an empire. Instead, it watched the dawn of something entirely new. Rebuilding the stars. The war had left countless worlds in ruins. Entire systems had been ravaged by centuries of council rule, stripped of their resources and left to decay. The former ruling species, once so certain of their superiority, now found themselves adrift in a galaxy they no longer controlled. But where the Council had ruled with oppression, humanity brought restoration. Human engineers, scientists, and diplomats spread across the stars, not as conquerors, but as builders. Former slave worlds were rebuilt with advanced technology, once forgotten colonies were restored, and long-abandoned cities flourished once more. And yet, humanity did not force compliance. Each species was given the choice to stand with them or go their own way. Some chose isolation, retreating to rebuild in solitude. But many others saw the future humanity was building and chose to be a part of it. Thus, the Terran Accord grew, not through conquest, but through trust. The last war. But peace did not come without resistance. In the dark corners of the galaxy, the last remnants of the old council still lurked. Hidden warlords, rogue admirals, and radical factions plotted in the shadows, refusing to accept a universe where humanity thrived. They launched one final war, a desperate attempt to reclaim what had been lost. They failed. Humanity's fleets, now the most advanced in the galaxy, met them in battle and crushed them. The Council's last strongholds fell within weeks. The final war lasted only months, and with its end, the last chains of the past were broken. The future of the galaxy. With no enemies left to fight, humanity turned its gaze forward. Explorers pushed beyond known space, charting new worlds and ancient mysteries. Scientists made breakthroughs that reshaped entire civilizations. Diplomats forged alliances that had once been impossible. For the first time, the galaxy was not ruled by fear, but by hope. And at its heart stood humanity, a species that had begun as nothing more than an afterthought, an upstart race of dreamers and fighters. Now, they were the apex. Not because they were the strongest, not because they had conquered, but because they had endured. And in the name of Earth, in the name of every world that had once stood alone, they built a future where no species would ever be forgotten again. Humanity had risen, and they were never falling again.